Greetings, I'm Dr. Andy Johnson. This is a pre-recording of a webinar on how to teach writing. So let's get down to it. But first of all, here are a couple of books that have some of the material in that I'm going to talk about tonight. These are both published by Rowman and Littlefield. As well, you see my email address there, and I've got a website, teaching-reading.com, and there you can contact me there. Podcast, YouTube, LinkedIn resources there for you. My podcast, The Reading Instruction Show, it's about things related to reading, but also specifically some podcasts are related to how to teach writing. And if you go to this website again, you can see the podcasts and the YouTube links. I've got lots of YouTubes related to teaching writing as well. So those are some sources for you. These are the 10 areas I hope to get to. So let's get down to it. Let's start our show. Let's get ready to rumble. Let's look at writing and writing. Writers, defining our terms, writing is expressing meaning with print. Every child can write. Every adult can write. Children may need to rely more on pictures and letters, but every child and adult can use print to express their ideas. Just is that some can't do it very well and need a little help. Every student can learn to write and learn to write well, kindergarten through graduate school, if you teach the process, and we rarely do. Writing is the most misunderinstructed skill in our K-12 schools. And you get better at any skill by practicing. Writers need to practice every day. You don't get better at anything if you don't practice. Students need to know that they are going to write every day. So while they're not at school, they are thinking about things that they might be writing about the next day. But every day, don't bump writing in favor of something more important. Writing and thinking are the most important, are very important skills. They should not be bumped. So let's start with how not to teach writing. First of all, if you want to not teach writing, assign all the writing topics. Nobody likes to write about things that are of no interest to them. There's no motivation. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't places for assigned topics, especially in the older grades. But if this is all you're doing, you're going to fall far short of what could be. Students should be able to select their writing topics, not all the time, but much of the time. And if students haven't done so in a while, they may have trouble initially finding their own writing topics. If you want to not teach writing, just assign more writing. It's not very effective. Writing intensive courses, this happens at the college level a lot. They think, oh, we'll just mandate more writing intensive courses. Students will get more writing assigned and they'll become better writers. Not. This has not happened. What happens is you get a lot of frustrated people. You get many students who think they can't write, and maybe a few will learn to write better. But this is not the way to teach writing, simply assigning more writing in your classes or more mandated writing intensive courses. If you want to teach writing, not do that. Teach grammar and other writing mechanics apart from real writing. Teach grammar skills in isolation on those worksheets. You got your worksheets here and you got your real writing there. The problem is there's very little transfer. The diagramming of sentences, the finding dangling participles and whatnot. These are very abstract endeavors. They have little to do with writing. Now, grammar is a means to an end. It should not be an end in of itself. The purpose of grammar is to make your writing, your message clearer. But if grammar were all that important, if learning grammar rules were so important, our best-selling authors would be grammarians. But that's not the case. This is not to say that grammar is not that important or not important at all. It's a means to an end. It should not be an end in and of itself. If you want to not teach writing by only describing what the end product should look like. This happens a lot in the older grades. This is what your opening paragraph should be. You should have these elements in your writing. This should go there, that should go there. This is what it looks like. But we never teach the process. Teach the process to develop the skill. And if you want to teach writing not, have students write for a single audience, the teacher. The teacher often is only the only person who sees the writing. Writing comes alive when students see how it plays in the heads of their readers. This makes it exciting. If you want to teach writing not, correct and edit instead of responding. Writers need responses from teachers and other peoples. Yes, there's time and places to correct and edit, but if that's all that you're doing, you are not teaching writing. So this is what writers need. They need to know and understand the 5-step writing process, the topic of tonight's webinar, and you need to teach each step, and we use explicit instruction to teach each of the steps in this process. Writers need contextual skills instruction. Avoid isolated skills instruction. They need to be taught grammar, punctuation, other in the context of their own writing. We need short mini lessons. Mini means short. Writers need responses versus correction. How they need responses from teachers and from other students. Now, could you imagine learning how to speak if people only corrected you but didn't respond to you? If people just corrected you, you'd probably soon stop speaking. We need responses. Children need to see how their ideas are received and are playing in the heads of others. Writers need to write for real audiences. By the way, the best way for students to develop a sense of audience is to provide them for your students. So students should be able to share with a neighbor in small group or in other ways. This makes the writing come alive. And writers need teachers who write. Teachers of writing need to write. Could you imagine taking piano lessons from someone who didn't play the piano or just played the piano back in college? Teachers need to write. It doesn't have to be long or it doesn't have to be big, but students like to see and hear what you're writing. But as a teacher, you're able to say, I was drafting this piece, and this is what happened to me, and this is what I did. You're able to use your own process, your own product, to demonstrate and to model to your students. And when you're writing, you remember things that you forgot. I'm practicing what I preach. I'm teaching a graduate writing course, and I'm writing a book at the same time about teaching writing. And I'm discovering a lot of things in the process of writing that I bring to my graduate writing course. And I'm able to say, oh, in my writing of this chapter, of this draft, this is what happened to me, and this is what I did. Writers need teachers who write. It doesn't have to be long, but you should be writing with your students and sharing. So we teach the process to develop the skills. There's nothing mysterious about the 5-step writing process. It's been around. It was described by Donald Graves way back in 1983. Nothing new here. I'm just going to highlight some of these things. Let's start with the first of the 5 steps. By the way, finding topics could be considered a pre-writing activity, but that's going to get some attention a little bit later on. That will be more fully explained. So the 5-step writing process starts with the pre-writing. Now this pertains to creative writing, expository writing of any kind. There's 3 parts. There's generating ideas. That means listing, brainstorming, power writing. These are all generating ideas sorts of things. There's organizing ideas, graphic organizers, outline, inductive analysis. And if you're writing expository text, students need to collect data or read and take notes or conduct interviews, observations, inquiries, experiments, or surveys. These are all things done before you start writing. Step 2 is drafting. That's the first attempt to get the ideas on the paper. The goal here is to simply get a bunch of words on the page. You cannot write well, however, if you're not willing to first write poorly. So this drafting should be like taking a big glob of clay and throwing it on the potter's wheel. Writers who get stuck are trying to get it just right the first time. And we need to teach students to write poorly. Just get those ideas on the page. You can't start to shape the pot unless you get the clay on the wheel. So drafting, some people call it a sloppy copy. Step 3, revising. This is the heart of the writing process. Revise, review, re-see. The writer revisits, reshapes many, many times. Parts are added, moved around, taken away. New ideas often reappear here as one idea connects with another. This is the shaping part that goes on. Revising is like shaping the pot. However, the pot is not shaped by one turn of the wheel. It goes around many, many, many times. So when you revise, you review, you revisit many, many times. Editing. This is step 4. This is where we look for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. However, if you really want to mess up a writer and ruin any writing project, insist on doing step 4 during steps 1, 2, or 3. That's the quickest way to ruin any writing project. Now, this is because if writers are focusing on editing during these steps, short-term memory is limited. The flow of ideas and the quality of ideas suffers. Precious brain space that could be devoted to generating and connecting ideas are instead used to worry about writing mechanics. So if you really want to mess up a paper or mess up a writer, insist that they focus on editing during steps 1, 2, and 3. No, don't do that. Step 5 is publishing or sharing with real people. As I've said, this makes the writing come alive, helps students develop a sense of audience. Of course, the best way to develop a sense of audience is to give them an audience. Students read their work aloud, they share, they publish, utilize some form of publications, and we have a lot of things available to us today. Those are the 5 steps. Nothing new or mysterious here. Been around for a long time. Most of the writing activities you do will take 2 to no more than 10 or 15 minutes. Most of your ideas will be the pre-write, write, and share with a neighbor. All right. And what I do is I usually give students the writing. I watch the pencils. I see when the energy is leaving the pencils, depending on the age and the prompt. Sometimes it's after 2 minutes. Sometimes it's after 5 minutes. As I'm watching my writers, I see the energy leaves. I give them a verbal mile marker. I say, 1 more minute, finish up your idea, and we'll be sharing. Quick and easy. A lot of these short writing activities, they then share in small group, and small group is best, or read with a partner, or swap papers, or author's chairs, or some way of sharing their ideas. The drafts are then put in a file folder, and I keep these file folders on a shelf or the table. They don't go in the student's desk because they get lost or paper gets used for other things. But I put them on a shelf. not in the student's desk. And by the way, this is a good way for me just to do a little progress monitoring. I can see how students are doing on their various projects. They then get to choose during writing workshop, or however you do it, which one of these drafts they wish to revise and edit. So they've got all these pre-write, draft, and shares. They get to then choose which pieces they wish to edit and revise, because not all of these are hot topics. A lot of our writing doesn't go anyplace. And the thing about sharing, it develops a sense of community over time as you're sharing thoughts, and it enables understanding real human beings sharing their thoughts, ideas, and experiences with other human beings. This is always a good thing. Now, we talked about finding writing topics. Once students know they're going to write every day, they start thinking about it. If students are not used to writing, it takes a little bit of time. But here's a common refrain. You ask a student, what do you want to write about today? I don't know. I don't know. You don't know what to write about? No, I don't. Well, that's a good start. Say, I don't know what to write about today. Good. What else are you thinking or feeling about today? Here's some ideas for getting writing going. First of all, language experience. This is great with younger students, kindergarten, primary, maybe first grade, maybe second grade. Try it with older students. People have experiences. They dictate and the teacher writes it down, and then they reread their words, their experiences. When I'm working individually with children whom I'm tutoring, we do this a lot, but it can be done in small group as well. This, by the way, is writing. They're using words to express their ideas. I use this in reading because then they practice reading their words and their experiences. And we reread it until fluency is achieved, usually 2 or 3 times at the most. This can be done individually, but in small group as well. I like to use this for analytic phonics as well. Find the word that ends with the d. There are 2 of them here. Or also ask, what do you want to write about today? I ask questions to get them going. What's going on in your lives? What are you thinking about? What do you want to tell somebody? What's something you notice? What did you do yesterday? And sometimes students can only write 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, that's a starting place. That's a starting place. With my older students, I usually have a minimum. All right, we've got to get 3 sentences today. Today we have a minimum of 3 sentences, or 4 or 5 or 2 or 1. But to be a human is to have ideas. If you can think, you have something to think about, you have something to write about. We are interested in your ideas. Once students realize that you're interested in their ideas, the writing seems to flow a little more freely. That's what I like about the language experience approach, because I am listening and recording students' ideas. Other ideas for getting ideas. Designate a page in a writing journal or portfolio where they keep a list of things they may want to write about. And as they get these ideas, they write them down. You could use these prompts, put them on a board or post them someplace. But these are all things you notice, interesting, important events, things that make you happy, sad, angry. You get the idea. You may want to put a poster on the board. Another way to get writing going is called prime the pump. In the old days, to get the pump to pump water, you pour a little water down there. That's called priming the pump. Move the handle and the water begins to be pumped out. Here, the teacher reads a short story or observation. This is often where the teacher reads what he or she has written and then asks the students to respond, or what did you think about, or what do you want to write about? It gets the writing pump primed. Teachers of writing should write. Go on a noticing tour. What do you see? Inside, outside. Brainwalk. I've done this with older students. The steps are, it's to take your brain for a walk. You just write a word on top of the paper, and then free associate. The first thing or image that pops into your mind, you just record it with a word or a short phrase and move on to the next and repeat until the page is full. You get a pile of gravel, but out of that pile of gravel, you usually get 3 or 4 writing ideas. Here's a brain walk I took. It makes sense only to me. Balloon circus in Grantsburg. It was at the fairgrounds. Fairs, I remember when all these memories came up, and out of this pile of gravel, I just freely associated the first word, phrase, image, idea that came into my mind. I wrote it down. And out of this pile of gravel, I think I had 3 or 4 great ideas to write about the next time. It's called the Brainwalk. A power write. A little bit differently than a free write. Here you have a specific amount of time. And students are to keep their pencil moving for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And if they don't know what to say, they just write pencil, pencil, pencil until an idea comes. But they know they're writing for a specific amount of time, 2 or 3 minutes. With older students, I use 3 minutes. Younger students try 2 or even 1 minute. All ideas for having ideas. Now, I know what you're saying. This is silly, personal stuff. This is fluff. They don't need that in the real world. Doesn't it get in the way of learning how to write? Why should we be doing all this creative stuff, all this personal stuff? Well, it doesn't get in the way of this. And let me explain. Any type of writing that you're using, this creative writing or personal writing, you're learning how to convey thoughts and ideas effectively. You're looking for just the right word to describe that idea, to convey that thought. These skills, this process transfers to more formal writing. So the creative and personal writing transfers to more formal writing, more academic and technical writing. It's the process again. It's all about the process. It transfers. So, silly or creative writing should be encouraged. They're able to see the impact that their words have on others. They're more motivated to write if they choose their writing topics and the type of writing that they like, they enjoy, what's important to them. Keeps them motivated to write, and a motivated writer is a better writer. We need to put the arts back in the language arts. That means we need to embrace poetry, drama, song lyrics, comedy monologues, podcasts, all sorts of writing. And I love poetry because it's using words to paint a picture. You have to select your words very carefully to convey the right thought, the right idea. All right, what about teacher writing prompts? Well, these should be seen as temporary devices, like the skinny spare tires you put on when you get a flat. The goal is not to ride that around. The goal is to just get you to the gas station where you can get your tire fixed. So they are not designed to be universal things. They should be temporary. The goal is to be prompt free. But if you use them, make them specific, universal, and open-ended. That's the trick in designing good teacher writing prompts. Now let me show you a bad example. This is a bad example, and I'll tell you why. Describe your favorite family vacation. Why is that a bad writing prompt? It assumes that every student has a family or feels comfortable, has had a family vacation, wants to go on a family vacation, enjoys. You can't assume these things. They have to be open-ended. Every student should be able to succeed. Here's a good writing prompt that anyone can do. Describe something you enjoy doing. Every student, regardless of circumstances, could respond to this, could take this as far or as not far as they want. But ultimately, the goal is for students to be able to choose their own writing topics most of the time, to be prompt free. I recommend using internal writing prompts. These are ideas, prompts that come from within the student. What do you think? Tell me about. What do you want to know? Comes from within the student. Primary age students, you want to provide just enough scaffolding to allow the student to write. So we use unfinished sentences. Gets them to write a sentence, maybe 2 sentences. For our early writers, we want to provide the scaffold so they don't become frustrated. And there's a variety of ways of providing scaffolding for writing. Inauthentic writing activities, we want to avoid these. These are when you express other people's ideas or write what students don't want to say or organize and explain someone else's thoughts. No one likes to do that. Students are asked to write a report or use writing to prove that they've read a book or to demonstrate knowledge. Okay, there may be places for this, but if this is the only kind of writing you do, you're not going to be developing your writers. That's not teaching writing. I don't know what it is. These are external writing prompts, and these are bad. Write a story about. What do you mean write a story about? Describe the parts. What was the author's point of view? Write a report. These are external. There may be times for this, but this is not how you teach writing. External writing prompts is not how you teach writing. They should come from inside to the greatest extent possible. When I write, yes, there's times when I have to write and explain certain reports, but I'm able to choose my writing topics. There may be times for external writing prompts, but it should be limited. If this is the only type of writing you do, it makes it harder for students to learn how to write. Remember, writing is easy if you teach the process, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. If students are allowed to say what they want to say, and if they're able to choose their writing topics, it's easier. We want to get children to write from their own experiences and expectations to the greatest extent possible. I say children, I mean students from kindergarten to the graduate school. Everyone can feel successful this way. More writing is not better. I've heard the teachers say, oh, go back and add a little bit more. That's not enough. Go back and add a little bit more. Well, think about it. More words does not make something better. In our adult worlds, nobody tells me to go back and write a little bit more, to add a little bit more. They usually want me to write as concisely as possible. So think about that. So instead of saying, go write a little bit more, when students say what needs to be said, they've said it. But what if they write the absolute minimum? Well then, help them find something else to say. Shorter writing pieces is just fine if they've said what they need to say. Rigor is not the same as complexity. Quantity is not the same as quality. All right, some specific strategies. Pre-writing ideas. Let's say you have your writing topic. Pre-writing is what you do before writing, and this is often just as important as what happens as you're writing. Here are some ideas, and you want to put some of these, not all of them, but some of these on a poster on the board someplace. And you're going to teach each one specifically using direct instruction, modeling. And when it comes time to write, you can say, boys and girls, remember to use one of your pre-writing ideas, pre-writing activities, pre-writing skills. So here are some simple ones. The power write, we talked about that. Find an idea, associate, keep your pencil moving for 2 to 3 minutes. I use this a lot, by the way. If I get stuck, I do a 2 or 3 minute power write. If I don't know how to start a 2 to 3 minute power write, it unsticks the writing brain. Outlining. Simple. Everyone should know that, but they don't, so teach them. This is an important writing, pre-writing skill. Look at the topic, list the important ideas using numbers. Use letters to add details. It doesn't have to be an official outlining form. The important thing is they list and you have subheadings. Letters, Roman numerals, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Brainstorm. Look at the idea. List as many ideas as quickly as you can. Here you should go all over the place. You do not evaluate while you brainstorm. The goal is quantity. Brainstorm and group. Generate ideas. Look for groups and patterns. Organize into groups. Use the groups for sections or paragraphs. This is inductive analysis. Generate ideas. Look for things that are the same. This is done quite a bit with expository writing. When you take notes, you look for groups and put things in groups, and that becomes your headings and subheadings. Web and brainstorm. Find a topic. Goes right in the middle. 2 to 4 subtopics or nodes, and then you brainstorm on each node. This can be used for creative writing, narrative writing, and expository writing. Find the one that works for you. Turn to a neighbor. Share an idea. Conversation good. You get ideas about what you want to write by listening to your neighbor. List. List at least 3. I use this a lot with a simple pre-write. Before you start writing today, boys and girls, list 3 things you want to say about your topic today. This is a little bit more thoughtful and deliberative than brainstorming. Brainstorm should be no evaluation whatsoever. Brainwalk, we talked about that. Talk or explain in small group. Explain your idea. Get ideas from the group and add them to your own. Expository writing. These are the steps in my book, Academic Writing Process and Product. I explain this. I add a 6th step. But you want to get your information or data. That means you need to read critically or observe. Take notes. Organize your notes, that's the inductive analysis, and then create an outline for expository writing, informational writing. All right, the draft, as I said, you cannot write well unless and until you write badly. So as a teacher, you've got to model the draft. You need to show them your stuff. You need to have scratches and marks all over the page. This is what a draft should look like. So you need to show students your garbage. You need to read your garbage to them so that they don't get all stuck up by trying to get it just perfectly. You can't write well if you're not first willing to write garbage. Don't think, write. Get the ideas on the paper. Reread, revise, review. You're going to use cognitive modeling to teach this. Simply going through your paper, rereading it many times to see how it starts to play in your head. That's one part of revising, or one revising strategy. Simply reread, review, revise. Another revising strategy is to read your paper out loud. You develop a writer's ear. You see how it sounds. You hear things, you see things, you sense things that you don't get simply from reading your paper. Something that I've been using the last couple of years, text-to-speech software. Most computer programs come with this. There's a lot of free stuff online. Plug it in, reads your speech, your paper out loud in a computer voice, and again, helps you develop a writer's ear, but you see things, you hear things that you don't hear. I use this quite a lot to help me revise a piece, especially if something's not going well. I just plug it in and have the computer read it out loud. Whole to part to whole revising. You've got the draft, that's the whole. You get the draft on the paper. And then whole to part, you look at the part. You start with one sentence. You get just that one sentence. You don't worry about anything else. Make that sentence say exactly what you want to say. Then move on to the next sentence. And then the next until you focus just on the paragraph. Then make sure that paragraph is just the way you want it. Then go to the next paragraph. See how you're going from the whole to the part, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, section by section. and then you read the whole thing again. And again, you are going to model this, demonstrate, and teach how to focus on just one sentence at a time. Older students can sometimes get overwhelmed. You're not overwhelmed if you focus just on one sentence. Again, it's important to get the draft on the paper, get the whole, get that garbage out there. And as you're focusing on sentences, one idea, you begin to connect with other ideas. And that's how a paper seems to grow. Sometimes Peter Elbow said, you write to see what it is you have to say. That is, as you're writing and thinking, you begin to connect with other ideas. That's whole to part to whole. Develop a sense of audience, as I said. Give them an audience. Could be a partner, a small group, or a class. But you'll have to teach your students, and this is part of the revising stage before they have that finished product, how to respond. So you'll have questions like this posted on the board. And they can respond verbally or in writing. And again, the best way to develop a sense of audience as a writer is to give students an audience. Another, and you're teaching them how to respond. This is another poster, like, question, add, think. And adopt and adapt all of these ideas. Adopt and adapt. Magic circle, oh, that's fun. I've used this in first grade through graduate school. You collect drafts. There should be no names or identifying marks on it. You mix them up. You pass out one paper to each student. They respond right on the paper. When they're done, they hold it up and they switch with someone else. And the goal usually in a session is to get to 4 papers. When you're done, say, finish up the one you're on and put the paper up here on the table. They're done. Students then go find their paper, and it's a paper that's alive with all these ideas and marks on them. I call it a magic circle because I was in 2nd grade when I started using this. I actually put the desks in circles so they could hold it up and put the paper down on the desk in the middle. It enabled students to get up and move around a little bit. And usually I find that about 4 papers, regardless of the level or age, usually about 4 papers, I start to see that it's time to call it for it to close. But if you get your paper back with the ideas of 4 other people, that's a good thing. This works, by the way, with creative writing, expository writing, any kind of writing. And the writers conference, this is where you sit with the students, 3 to 20 minutes. I like to keep it closer to 3. A place for the student to talk about their writing, not an editing session. So you're asking questions. You're letting the student read. What do you want to tell me about your writing? And you're saying, I like this part. Tell me more about what do you mean by? All right, so you're asking questions to get the student to tell you about his or her writing. And I'm not going to get too much more into writing conferences here. But if you study writing workshop, and buy my future book, you'll have a lot more on the writing conference. And editing. Yes. Self-editing. You're teaching students how to edit, but you need to provide structure, a simple checklist, and keep it as simple as possible. And this checklist should reflect the things that you are teaching. Use it to reinforce the skills that you're teaching. Now, here are some simple ones for elementary. I'm teaching a graduate course in scholarly writing, and you don't need to have a complicated checklist. It's what students can use to guide them. This is what I'm looking for. Hopefully, they're using this self-editing before they get to me, because I'm using this to grade and evaluate their papers. But that's a graduate scholarly writing course. But you're using it to reinforce the things that you're teaching. Comes in a variety of forms. You can adopt and adapt. I do not recommend rubrics. They're too cumbersome. They're too complex. They're useless. You spend more time deciding if it's a 3 or a 4 than just giving good feedback. And really, it doesn't matter if it's a 3 or 4. You're just looking to provide feedback. Checklists I like because you can use it to differentiate, meaning you can give different checklists to different students. Students who are more advanced or better writers, they have maybe a little different checklist. Some students have a little simpler checklist. That's a way to differentiate. Peer editing. Oh, yes. Students edit each other's papers. We have two forms of this, a skills expert table and a professional editing table, and adopt and adapt. Well, usually grades 2 through graduate school can use some form of peer editing, and it usually involves peer editing checklists. Here's the skills expert table. It's where students edit each other's paper, and it's an indirect way to learn about spelling, grammar, and punctuation. They're learning these skills in the context of real writing, and the conversation that takes place at these tables enhances learning. Conversation. Good. Here's how you do it. You designate a day or a date for the editing of papers. You identify 3 to 8 skills related to grammar, spelling, punctuation upon which to focus. Assign a table for each skill, each focus area. So 2 to 4 students are at a table and they're looking just for that one thing. Maybe it's capitalizing the letters. Maybe it's ending, whatever it is. But 2 to 4 students at a table look at just that one skill area. So the unedited papers are passed out to the different tables, and you can decide whether students put their names on it or not. Each table looks at only one area. The edited papers, as they're passed along, goes to the next table. So as they go around the circle, and of course everyone's at a table doing some editing, these papers will come back getting fully edited. It's easier for students, especially younger students, to focus on one skill rather than all these skills. And again, they're learning skills in the context of real writing. Professional editing tables. Here, students work with a parent, a paraprofessional, or an older student, or the teacher to look at all the elements. But when students have completed steps 1, 2, and 3, and only then, when they have revised, then they bring it to the editing table and not before. So you may have only 2 or 3 students a day at most going through a professional editing table. Here's the steps. Designate one table for editing. Students who have finished revising can do an initial edit on their own, but then bring to the professional editing table, and you have the checklist there. 2 or 3 students are working with a teacher, parent, para, older student to edit that piece using the checklist. And again, the conversation that takes place. And here's the thing about the professional editing table. All students should have a chance to be a part of this. All students should have equal opportunity. It shouldn't fall on 1 or 2 students. All students. Remember, you have a para, you have an older student, or a teacher there at the editing table helping them with what to look at. You're using a checklist of some sorts. Again, you can work in pairs or small groups. Editing table, the conversation is good that takes place at these. You're creating structure and scaffolding. And use very simple checklists. Keep your checklists simple. And the last thing, sharing and publishing. You're limited only by your imagination here. Small groups, books, published papers, websites, video reads where they read it on a video or a podcast, bulletin board. There's probably a lot more that I haven't thought of, but these are just some. And the final thing to include, the types of writing that should be in a K-12 curriculum. Well, you have persuasive writing, narrative writing where they're describing an experience, expository writing where they're explaining or describing, but also inquiry writing where they're describing the phase of the inquiry process or an experiment or science. The arts we've talked about, poetry, drama, scripts, song lyrics. And then communication, personal communication, emails, letters, newsletters, personal letters. It might even include Twitters, blogs, Facebook posts, podcasts, digital media that we haven't even thought of. But these are the 6 types of writing. Now, Common Core State Standards only focuses on those 3, and I think that's very limited thinking. You should have 6 kinds of writing in your writing curriculum. How to teach writing. This is just an overview, but hopefully you got enough here to get you started.